All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Safely Extreme podcast here on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. I am, of course, Josh Bycer, and joining me, as always, my co-host from Nexus Games, Sharky.
I'm here to help assist in examining the black holes and how to weave right through them and get the coin and make off like a bandit and win the match.
Breaking the laws of physics of game design.
No, it was perfectly within the physics.
I'm gonna
It's
have to
just the
send
power of
developers a
chance.
message and ask them what's going on here.
The developers will reply, "He's using the power of chaos. It's easy."
hmm But for this week's topic, we had kind of drop into our laps this afternoon with an interview going up regarding Days Gone 2, or the not so sequel to the Days Gone game from PlayStation 4, where a developer basically complains saying that if you expect a game to get a sequel, you should be buying it on day one. And of course, that has caused no controversies whatsoever, right?
None, zero, zilch.
hmm
And that's exactly why we're here, because there's no controversies, right?
hmm Oh, and for people watching this live record, let me know if the sound levels between Shark and I are all right. I've been playing around with things, and I'm not sure how we sound, speaker wise.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely a lot to unpack with this. And another topic we can certainly discuss in a future show is what games deserve a sequel, or when should you make a sequel to a game? Hey, Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
But for this one, expecting people to pay full price for a game. I mean, this is one of those things that it has certainly changed a lot over the past 30 to maybe 40 years of the industry.
Yeah. And when we talk about this topic, it's it's a rather difficult one because here's the big issue is if you don't already own the game, how are you, sure, how do you know that you want a sequel?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, there's pure fanboyism to where you always want a sequel from, a particular franchise,
Mm-hmm.
as well as there's a non-fanboy aspect to that where a particular franchise has delivered over and over again, and it only makes sense that the next one is going to deliver too. But
Mm-hmm.
the big thing is on platforms like Steam where there's refunds and everything, that makes a lot more sense because you can buy the game, and if you don't like it, you can return it. You
Yeah.
know, if it's not worth supporting for that price, whatever price it is, whether it's $60 or $5, then you can return it. But when you buy it on consoles, for full price and everything, that money's gone forever. GameStop won't give you your money back. PlayStation won't give you your money
Mm-hmm.
back. Nobody will give you your money back, not unless there's a big stink about it, like um, uh, Cyberpunk. But the thing
Mm-hmm.
is there had to be a big stink about it, and I don't believe you could get a refund everywhere. You could only get
Mm-hmm.
refunds in certain places. So like,
Yep.
why
So
would you? Let's say for example, why would you buy Cyberpunk and support it on day one to get it a sequel kind of thing if it's not going to be worth getting a sequel kind of thing? And
yeah.
I mean, there's demos and stuff like that can definitely help on that. But the fact is that you don't know until you actually play it, and a demo is only surface level because the fact
Yeah.
is the demo could be good. You get into the actual game, and it's a train wreck. I mean,
Or
Cyberpunk
vice versa.
2077 could have had a really good demo to it, and then where they left out all the sections that have all the bugs in it, and they just gave you this, these little limited sections that had no bugs in it.
Mm-hmm. And there's only so much, I think, trust that consumers have over these games. And as we said a few years ago, you could certainly argue, yes, you can trust the developer to release a game day one and we're going to buy a full price. But that's when there's what, like 5 to 10 games being released a month, maybe every 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
In today's market, there are 30 to 40 games being released daily. And are they all, triple A quality? No. But there's so much flooding the market these days. I feel that AAA developers are starting, like the reverberation from the indie side is catching up to them.
Yeah, and
Why?
here's the other aspect: does AAA quality mean good quality at this point? I mean, back in the day, yeah, probably, but now, not at all. Not at all.
Oh, yes. And of course, people are pointing out the irony that the creative director for Days Gone that was released in a very buggy and kind of messy state that had to be patched with multiple patches post release is complaining about people buying a game on day one.
Mm-hmm.
And that is also part of this issue. There really is fewer and fewer reasons to spend money day one on a game these days. And I want to talk a little bit more about kind of the quality or the types of consumers in a second. But today's market, it is very hard to ask somebody to shell out, $60, $70 on a brand new game.
Yeah. I know that I personally buy a lot of games on day one, but I'm buying them through Steam where there's a refund policy and I can get my money back.
Mm-hmm.
And and I do my research behind my games, and if something's seeming sus, I don't go for it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
In most of the games that I don't go for on day one, I usually don't go for either at all or for a long ways down the road, kind of thing.
You wait for a super deep sale.
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily wait for a super deep sale, but I wait and see, what the game is actually like. And then if it is, if the red flags I've seen were not there, which they pretty much always have been, then I go ahead and pick it up. But if they are, then, I consider that into the price and just be like, yeah, I'm not going to get it until it gets in a deep enough sell to overcome these red flags or until they fix the red flags, kind of thing. And there's a sale, because, like I was one of the people who was, really wanting and really interested in One Man's Lie. I mean, No Man's Sky. Or did I get it right the first time? and I was like, I really like, really like survival games. This game looks really good, really solid. And I looked around everywhere, for research on it. And everywhere I looked, I seen the same quote unquote gameplay video every time, and I seen it, 3 years ago. I seen it 2 years ago. I seen it posted 1 year ago. I seen it posted a few weeks ago, kind of thing. And the game is releasing here in like a week. And it's like, there's something wrong here. I'm not going to buy it on day one. Not going to buy it on day one. And then it came out, and we seen what kind of train wreck it really was. Now they've they've done a lot to fix it and everything, but at this point, my price for that is free. That's my sell price for that. That's what they're going to have to go to get me to download it, And I won't even be in a hurry to play it when I get it for free. And the thing is when they release the next game, I definitely am not getting that on day one. There is no way anybody can say anything to me that I will even be getting that in month one or year one. I probably won't even get it at all. But if that one goes well, and maybe if 3 years down the line I find it on sale for like $1 kind of thing, I might pick it up. And then if they get all good marks with that, and then their next game kind of thing, They come out with that, and it's looking good. Then I might get that one on day one. But they're going to have to, right their ship and prove that they righted their ship before I will even dream about buying anything on day one from them. And
Mhm.
I was not totally up on the days gone situation, but from what you said, it was broken and buggy when it first came out. So that would have been
Mhm.
one of those similar situations where I would have waited for a deep sell because of that.
Yep. And part of the issue, again, is as you said, consoles don't have automatic return policy. They don't have any return policies, I think, unless it basically goes into crisis mode. And you have to be aware of that as a consumer. And again, like you said, it's why a lot of us buy games on Steam these days, or even on Epic Games, where there is a 2 hour refund window. And if a game is buggy and broken, you're going to find that out probably within 5 to 10 minutes of playing it.
Yeah.
And to Sir Seed's comment, yep, like people are expecting, like the term AAA has really changed over the last 5 to 10 years. Like when we talk about AAA games in the late '90s and the early 2000s, this was considered like the marquee games. These were your major titles. Today, however, we certainly have seen the independent space really rising up. I mean, we can talk about games like Celeste, Disco Elysium, Hades, Shovel Knight, Subnautica, so many other indie games that have managed to be bigger in some aspect than their AAA counterparts.
And the upcoming Neon Continuum.
Which is going to be totally pay to win. But expecting people to spend money automatically on day one is not really, I think, where this industry is anymore. I mean, you look at games that get months and months of content patches and season updates. And I mean, why should somebody buy your game day one? And when we talk about that, I think there's four kinds of consumers. The first kind are the mega fans.
The
These are the
fanboys.
people, what was that?
The fanboys.
Yeah. The people who they love game A, they love game B, so they're going to love game C. I'm a fanboy of XCOM and Darkest Dungeon, so day one for me, I'm going to be playing those games regardless of how much money they cost and whether or not I get a press key.
I
These
don't
are
think you're a fanboy of those. You're just a big fan of them.
mhm. Oh
They're auto purchase because they've proven themselves to you
yes,
over and over again. You're not like if they all of a sudden took a nosedive kind of thing,
oh
you
no,
wouldn't keep on doing that.
yeah,
Had
and
you been
again,
a
this is
fanboy,
why
you would.
yeah, and this is what I'm talking about more on the consumer side. Again, there are consumers who have grown to trust Nintendo that when they see a new Mario game or a new F-Zero game of ponies watching, they're going to buy it on day one because they have proven that track record. Now, unfortunately, most consumers don't belong in that first category because they don't have tons and tons of disposable income, and B, they may not trust that developer 100% of the time. So the second tier are the people who are going to wait and see. They'll probably wait for either a sale or law confirmation. So if a game is $50, $60, they'll probably wait until it's like 20 or 30. I there are a lot of games that I am just kind of semi interested in that usually a 50 to 75% off sale is enough to get me to bite the bullet, even if I'm not completely sold on the game. That's how I've gotten a lot of the Assassin's Creed games, Tomb Raider titles, which I still haven't played yet. But at that lower price, I feel it's acceptable to take that risk. Now, the third group, these are, the outliers. These are the people who are, I'm sure you're well aware, Shark, the game collectors. These are the
Hmm.
people who they're going to buy something to have it, and it's just all about price for them. So basically,
They're not playing your games. They're
yeah,
playing Steam.
yeah. or they're just playing their collection, for that mythical day when everything shuts down, we have all the time in the world. So,
Well, that
do
didn't
they,
happen a year ago.
yeah, but we saw it at work during that. That's the problem, or at least I had to.
People who
But
had jobs had to.
yeah, like for them, it doesn't matter about your game. If they see it at $5.99, $9.99, maybe $2.99, they're gonna buy it. But ultimately, they're not your fans at all. You know, you can release your next game, you could get 10 out of 10 game of the year, and they'll be like, who the hell cares about you? I bought your game off Humble for 27 cents. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they may have just loaded up literally just to get an achievement or just go, okay, this is a game, okay, I'm done, uninstall. I just did that last night with a game I got from one of I think it was the Humble choice. It was a visual novel detective game. I loaded up, saw, was like, okay, I'm not interested, goodbye. And that's all I played of it. So that was about 40 seconds. And that's what these people are going to be to you as a consumer. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final category, they don't care at all. Your game could be free and they're never going to touch it. Most likely, these are people who may pirate your game just to, stick it to you, or they don't even care enough to pirate it. And they are never going to be in your consumer base no matter how cheap your game is.
Yeah. And I know with the Days Gone article, one thing he was talking about was the people pirating the game.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that there's a reason why they pirated it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and what is that reason? Well, some of the reason was the fact that they were not part of they didn't care. They were never a consumer of your game.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the reason was that they released the game in a broken, buggy form, and there's no demos or anything, and they want to try the game out before they play it and find out that it's a buggy mess, and then never buy it because it's a buggy
Mm-hmm.
mess. I mean, if you want people to buy your game on day one, you need to release a day one copy that is worth buying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and piracy, that's another topic in of itself, obviously.
Yeah, one we've
But
already covered too.
yeah, but again, people, I feel like the piracy argument is getting weaker and weaker in today's market. There are people who will pirate a game to try it out, but again, like the people, like the quote unquote, like the true pirates, the ones who are going to break your game and they're going to put up on sites I can't mention here, obviously. Those people are never going to be your consumer. Like, if somebody, I think, has the choice between supporting a developer or just literally pirating the game, if they had even, I think, an iota of care about your company or your game, they're going to pay for it eventually. But if you're expecting, or if you just think that piracy just kills a good game, I don't think that's the case anymore.
No. I mean, there might be the rare exception where that happens,
Mm-hmm.
but it is what it is. It's an exception. You know, it's not going to be the normal.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, I think, have trouble, understanding why some of these games, or why people don't expect to rush out and buy these titles. And going back to the Days Gone argument, that the second people find out that your game is bad or there's issues with it, why should they spend money on it? And from his argument about games that show that expect a game to get a sequel should be bought day one, I think what we find is that for a lot of games, especially in the independent space, that it's more about long-term sales. Because as we know from a lot of independent games, either a game gets a massive spike right out of the gate, or it's like a consistent uptick in terms of game sales and game interests.
Well, I mean, when you look at the sales numbers, I mean, it's a hockey stick shape, but
Mm-hmm.
which is spiked on day one and then it tapers off after that.
Yep.
Well, it falls down fast and then it tapers off. And the thing is it takes marketing and all kinds of stuff to get that spike at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
which influences your sales on Steam and whatnot on site, after that. But here's the thing, is that when you know the way most developers succeed at game development is they release a game that gets some some fashion of fan base. It doesn't have to be
Mm-hmm.
massive, but it also can't be so small that it's basically non-existent. I mean, you release a game, it sells enough to at least somewhat come close to breaking even,
Mm-hmm.
and people are happy that maybe you at least made half your money back. And when I say your money back, I mean your labor, everything. You made 50% of that back, and then those people really enjoyed that experience. And you had a Discord, you had Twitters, you had all these social medias. Well, not all of them, but you had several of them that they could join and follow you, kind of thing, and they will be interested in your next game. And when you do that, then when you go to your next game, those people are either automatic sales or close to that kind of thing, and that gives you a bigger spike on your next game that adds to your other spike, which then adds to the algorithm, which gives you another spike on top of that. So it's spikeception kind of thing. And then that leads you to be successful. And then, it just keeps on adding up every time after that, as long as you deliver quality games. Now
Mm-hmm.
then, we've seen examples with Clay to where they've not released unquality games. They've just released very, very different and not as commercially relevant games, like the Floor is Lava. Is that the name of it?
Hot Lava and Invisible Ink.
Yeah, which were good games in their own, but they were
They
not.
were experimental.
Yeah, they were
Yes.
experimental. They were different. They were, you know, testing the waters or the lavas in this
Mm-hmm.
case. And they were successes. They were not wild successes kind of thing, but they were successes because the spikes that they had built before added to that.
Yeah.
And it's you know they still delivered a quality product when they did it. So people were not pissed off at them after they got it. They may have
Yeah.
not enjoyed the game. The game may have not been for them, but they were not mad because of it. And
Yeah.
making your fan base mad is the way you destroy your fan base. And
Yeah. And
EA and a lot of other AAAs have been doing that for many years. And over time, it's slowly coming to the point where it's going to bite them in the ass.
yeah. And to that point, here's like a quick breakdown of that. Hot Lava has about like 2,000 reviews on Steam. Invisible Ink has about 4,000. Auction Not Included this time has 60,000, or a little bit above it. And as to what Shark said, there's a difference between a game that is good that doesn't sell well, something that's very experimental, something that, it's not a hot market, versus a game that doesn't sell well because it's a bad game or has a lot of issues starting out. And like you said, anyone who I think played Invisible Ink or Hot Lava and enjoyed it, I think they got their money's worth out of it.
Even if they
Did
didn't
they?
enjoy it, they weren't mad because of it. It just wasn't for
Yeah.
them.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, a lot about consumer expectation, consumer trust is basically saying, okay, how did you do in your last game? And if you did bad, people are going to be less trustworthy of you. And this is why we always say that for a lot of development, it is just a constant race. You have to be doing better with each new game. Because if you're not, then you're losing fans. And if you're losing fans, people aren't going to want to trust you.
And when Josh says better, he doesn't mean that, you're one-upping yourself as of the game quality.
Mm-hmm.
He means that you're continuously putting out games of quality. You're not putting out broken, buggy messes like Bethesda games.
Mm-hmm. Because people will only, I think, put up with this for so long. Bethesda is a really good example of this. I mean,
Or a really
how
bad
many
example of it.
people? It's a good bad example. How many people these days would buy a new Fallout or Elder Scrolls game day one?
All the fanboys, but
Yeah.
nobody else.
Mm-hmm. And we said this before. The Bethesda joke about buy our game and wait for the first content patch or the first update. People aren't laughing about that anymore because guess what? There are indie developers making games of similar quality, and they don't have tons and tons of day one bugs.
Yeah, I mean, Bethesda got away with it for so long that they think that they expect it now.
Mm-hmm.
And
And the only reason they got away with it for so long was that nobody else was making games like that.
mm,
But guess what? We have stuff like Minecraft, Valheim, the Gothic series. Um, you guys will probably know more of the massive open RPGs than I would. But indie developers, again, have caught up and they've, I think, lapped a lot of AAA developers. You can't get away with just a name anymore. I mean, a lot of people did not expect a lot out of Doom 2016 or Resident Evil 7. And id and Capcom had to earn that trust back.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting how things work out because, like, you know, if things keep on going the way they're going, there's some, we have to look at cause and effect, and stuff is going to happen, obviously, because stuff happens. You know, that's a good explanation, right? But the thing is that basically when they're burning their fan base out, these triple A's, several of these triple A's, not all the triple A's, but like when you look at several of them, like EA kind of thing, they're burning their fan base out, and once you burn out that fan base to such a size that it will not support you, then you're done. Because that's when everything just cascades downhill, because that's when you get even more desperate and do even more bad things to try to up your money. And when you do that, you burn off even more of your fan base, which then causes you to do more, which causes you then, and it's this endless cycle until there is zero people willing to buy your game.
Mm-hmm.
And, we don't know where that point is, but there is some point there at that. And, well, I mean, they're going to burn the wells. Once they burn enough wells, they're done.
Yeah.
Because there are wells that get burned. Like they play a game for so long, and then they're like, they eventually get pissed off at it, despite them being wells, and they will absolutely quit at that point. And once you burn enough of them, it's over.
Yeah.
It's that critical mass. you're perfectly fine until you aren't. And then once you aren't, you're just straight down the hill, you know.
Downward spiral.
Yep.
And yeah, and that again, it's this issue we see with churn with a lot of mobile and free to play games. That in their respect, they don't worry about sequels. They worry about, how many people are engaging with their game on a month by month basis. So if people start going away, you're not getting more and more people back unless you do something drastic. And even then, that may not guarantee it. Yeah. Yeah, to Elgaro's point about the sports games. But even they, I think, are still having trouble, capitalizing on this. Like Call of Duty, for instance. I was trying to look up numbers of the latest one. Is the latest Call of Duty Black Ops 3?
I don't know.
Because that one is only sitting at like 44,000 reviews. And while that is certainly a lot, I would have expected more from a franchise that long lasting. And I think people are starting to wise up to the fact that, yeah, you're releasing the same game every year, every 2 years. Why should I spend $60 on that?
Yeah, and there will be a point where they will stop taking the abuse, Elgato, and it'll happen one person at a time. But when it becomes big enough, everything's going to go downhill real fast. It's like a stack of dominoes set up to tumble over. That one domino can sway back and forth in the wind, and it will be perfectly fine until the wind just hits it just enough to tip it over, and bam, everything just is gone. It's fine until it isn't.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 points I want to go back to. The first one is kind of the idea of, the price value of these games. That people, like, there are some series that don't go on any sales whatsoever. And Call of Duty, I think, is a good example of that. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a single Call of Duty game drop below $10. Like, the older ones, like from 2009, 2007, they're $20. But there's, like, going back to the kinds of fans, that there are people who are interested in a game, they want to support it, but they don't want to spend full price on it. Maybe they can't spend full price on it. Excuse me. And for them, they're going to wait for that sale. And if you don't do any sales, I feel like you are robbing your game of a potential audience. Because the people who buy your game, $60 day one or month one, they're going to do it regardless. But if you want to attract more people, you need to lower that barrier of entry. The Total War franchise is a good example. Pony gifted that one to me because I have no trust in Creative Assembly when it comes to Total War. The ones that I played were just like, it didn't work for me. So the chance of me spending $50, $60 on that game, no matter how much praise it gets, is zero. But unfortunately, the game has been out for, I think, several years now, and it has yet to drop down to a price that I would be interested in taking that risk on spending money.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Yeah, it's still $60. And like we've said, you can always lower a game's price. You can never raise it back up, hence the risk of game sales. But at some point, you have to realize that you've kind of, tapped out the well when it comes to $60 on a game.
Although there is the other side of that, to where you have games like Factorio that notoriously never go on sale.
Mm-hmm.
And but they're also not asking a massive price for their game either. They're not asking $60. They're asking what, 20?
It looks like they went up to 30.
30. Yeah,
And
I
again,
think it was 30.
Factorio is one of those exceptions to these rules when we talk about them. But yeah, like Factorio is only $30. And again, Another point about this, if you have zero trust, yeah, exactly. They'll have to pay me, right? Like Goddess did in order to play that one.
Yeah. I have zero trust with No Man's Sky, One Man's Lie. So, it would have to drop to zero. Like I said before, it has to be free for me to touch
Hmm.
that game. I won't pick it
And
up for $1. I won't pick it up for 29 cents.
and this goes back to something that I said when we were talking about game preservation, that every game has a life expectancy or a shelf expectancy. That you can't expect someone to spend $60 on a game from 10 years ago. It doesn't matter if it's the best damn game in the world. Why would someone spend $60 on a 10-year-old game when they can spend $60 on a 10-day-old game or a 0-day-old game?
Yeah.
Now, the other point I wanted to bring up, going back to the invisible ink and hot lava example, and this I think is where Days Gone fits, is the experimental games, the untested, unproven titles. And this is somewhere I feel that the developer of Days Gone, the one who gave an interview, completely messed up his point on. That when we talk about something that's untested, not only are you working with a handicap, but you can't expect people to put down day one money on something that they've never heard before. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of games get sequels, is that the first game needs to be viewed as a test bed. It has to be a really damn good test bed. But people expect then the sequel is where all these ideas and elements get refined and polished. If you look at the difference between Assassin's Creed and Assassin's Creed 2, for instance, that was a major jump. And the
Mm-hmm.
first game didn't really do, I think it didn't do like amazingly well for them, but it did well enough to prove that concept.
Yeah, I remember when I first got Assassin's Creed 1, it
Hmm.
was at GameStop on sale for 99 cents. I had heard, so much about one of the Assassin's Creed. I can't remember which one it was. It was either
Hmm.
it definitely wasn't 2. It was like it was somewhere I think it was somewhere like Revelations or Brotherhood or some one of them. But
Hmm.
like, you know, I was like, I had no interest or knowledge in the franchise kind of thing, and was, you know, not sure, kind of thing. But I seen the first one was on sale for 99 cents, and the second one was on sale for, I think it was like $10 or something like that. So I was like, that's 99 cents. I'll pick it up. I picked up the first one kind of thing, and I played it, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a lot. So the instant I finished that game, I instantly went out, a few minutes later and just went and got the second one that I seen on sale. I played
Yeah.
that and I fell completely in love. And then after that, I went and bought the third one, which I forget which one that was, part of the Ezio trilogy.
Yeah, something like that.
With I think that was Revelations or Brotherhood, and I bought it full price. And then I went home and played the heck out of that. And then I was waiting for the
Hmm.
next one of the Ezio trilogy to go buy it at full price.
Yeah, but again, though, if that first game wasn't on sale, would you have invested money in it?
No,
And there's our point right there, that a lot of people, I feel, again, treat Nintendo as the standard for all games and all design.
yeah,
That
you
Nintendo
just have to be Nintendo and everything will be fine.
Mhm. Nintendo can release an experimental crazy game like Pikmin for $50, $60 and earn decent money because guess what?
They're
They're
Nintendo.
Nintendo. But if you are a developer with an unproven track record and an unproven franchise, you don't have that luxury. And from what people are saying, again, I did not play Days Gone, and again, we can't experience day one of Days Gone. That was not easy to say there because it's been patched up. But I remember Arkham Knight on the PC. and how horrible that game was on day one. And yeah, exactly. Pikmin was also a great game, but it was also very experimental. And again, it raises that question: how many people will have bought a Pikmin game if it didn't come from Nintendo? Well,
Or if it
actually, I
was
have
a
an
no
answer to
sell.
that. How many people bought Brutal Legend compared to Pikmin?
Mm-hmm.
Because Brutal Legend was along that lines of a console real-time strategy game. Now, of course, by that point, Double Fine had a proven track record with Psychonauts. But again, when you do something different, when you are trying to be a different developer, if you're trying to start from the ground up with a new franchise, you cannot be expecting, Call of Duty, Halo, Mario numbers.
Unless
And
you're Nintendo.
yeah, and this is why you have to, develop smart if you're working on something untested or experimental. If you're putting the same amount of money that, BioWare puts into a Mass Effect game into your untested game, good luck getting a return on investment on that.
Yeah. The only way a lot of these games like that are able to actually get a return on investment is they were sponsored by the consoles, like
Mm-hmm.
Horizon Zero Dawn, because they were very much that they were doing something new, something different compared to the past, and
Mm-hmm.
basically the only way they were able to realistically fund that game and everything was have Sony fund the game and fund it with bankrolls kind of thing, because the fact is that I'm pretty safe to say that game did not break even. I don't know if it did, but I'm pretty sure it didn't, because the fact is the fact is that Sony threw tons and tons of money at that game,
They threw
and
tons and tons of money in No Man's Sky too.
well, not that much.
Mm.
They,
But
but
yeah, and
they did that not to make money on the game, but to make money on the console. To sell units,
yeah.
move units.
And also again to establish a franchise. Because again, like going back to the Assassin's Creed example, once somebody likes game one in the series, they're going to most likely like game number two and game number three, unless you screw it up like the Assassin's Creed series, but that's
Or
another
Bioware.
story. Yeah. And to Soren and from York's comment about whether they're gamers, I would say they would still count as consumers. Again, they will probably count in like the third category, what I came with earlier, that they're gonna want to play your game, but their their investment is very low. They're not buying your game because they love your studio, they love your franchise. They're gonna buy a game because they just want, that one thing to enjoy. They're not gonna be following your news day in and day out.
Hmm. And that's where it gets into the marketing aspect, because like if they aren't following you day in and day out, they don't know who you are,
Mhm.
basically.
And again, if you are unproven in a space,
Or
you have to
unknown.
work. What was that?
Or unknown.
Yeah, you have to work 5 to 10 times harder at minimum to get noticed. There's a reason why Disco Elysium blew up because those developers went, 10 times above and beyond anything else in like that kind of visual novel, choose your own adventure space.
Yeah. And here's the thing: is it if you're an unknown indie kind of thing, it's harder for you to release a game than it is for AAA,
Hmm.
because not only do you not have the budget of them, but you have to do better than them. Because if you don't do better than them, why would they come to you? You know,
And
why
this
would
is
they
why.
attempt to find you? Why would you look for a needle in a haystack
Hmm.
if there's a giant needle right beside it?
or just a giant stack of needles next to yours.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, being able to do something different, it comes with risk. This is why a lot of AAA developers like iterating, and why franchising and franchises, I should say, are so big. Because if you know that Assassin's Creed 1, let's say, again, I'm just pulling a number out, let's say it sold 500,000 copies. Well, you can realistically say that Assassin's Creed 2 will sell probably around 500,000 copies, maybe a little bit more due to word of mouth. But you can't then say, oh, well, if this game sold 500,000 copies, mine will do 2.5 million copies. And we saw this with Dead Space. That when EA announced that they wanted Dead Space 3 to sell, what was it, like 6 or 5 million copies within its like first 2 weeks or so, no survival horror game at that time was pulling out those numbers. And you have to
And that's
be
exactly the
very,
reason why it failed.
yeah. And you have to understand that there are only so many consumers for a game, and there's only so many who are willing to spend full price. Now, if Days Gone, after 6 months, maybe a little bit more of that, had, dropped its price down to $20 or $30, I'm sure it will have gotten a very huge uptick. And again, if your game is unknown, you have to do that. Like I said a few minutes ago, there's a reason why Nintendo games don't go on sale. Because they're Nintendo. Everybody and their mother, father, and grandparents know who Mario is at this point. They don't need word of mouth to get people to buy a new Mario game.
Well, I don't think they need to drop down in price right when you release. That's generally a bad idea. But if you need to evaluate that on your own, kind of thing, too, if you need to. But like in general, when you're doing something more experimental, you generally need to go on sale. I wouldn't necessarily drop the price because dropping the price is very, very different than going on sale. Although they both devalue your game, the fact is if you drop your price too low, then people think that the quality is bad.
Mm-hmm.
If
another topic right there.
if you
How
drop
much to lower your price?
if if you had a $60 game and you drop the core price down to $10 kind of thing, people are going to think something's wrong with it. Now then, if it's a $60 game and you're giving it for whatever percent off that becomes $10, they're going to just think that's a good sell and not something's wrong with the game.
Yeah. Also, as a quick time check, we're about 45 minutes into this topic.
All right.
Yeah, and when you are trying to experiment, this is where you have to be creative in terms of how you approach marketing this game. Like, I don't imagine like any of the experimental unique indie games that we've played, if a AAA developer would have done the same thing and asked $60, anyone would buy that game. Like, would someone spend $60 on Disco Elysium or that concept without any other knowledge about the developer or the track record?
If a AAA got a hold of it with its marketing budget, probably.
Yeah. But would it be enough to justify that kind of sequel? And again, that depends.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are trying to pitch these ideas to people, like going back to the Horizon Zero Dawn example, that if you're going to experiment at the AAA level, you need the full backing of the console or whatever your publisher is in order to get that word out. And it didn't seem like there was really a lot on Days Gone. I remember seeing that E3 opening demo that they did, and then it just kind of disappeared.
Yep. And I was interested in it, but it disappeared. I didn't see anything else about it, didn't hear anything else about it, and I didn't even know it ever released until it did.
Yeah. And apparently it's coming to the PC for $50 literally next month from this stream.
Question is will it be broken and buggy on day one? Will it be a bad port on day one?
And would people care enough to buy the game at $50?
Mm-hmm.
And again, some people will say, yeah, it's a AAA game. But guess what? It's going into a space where there are a lot of open world style games. And again, this is one of the things that we've said before, that AAA developers have to play catch up these days in the independent space. And that was not how it was 20 years ago.
Yep. Very, very different market. Market's always changing. It's not the same this year as it was last year or the year before that. It changes a lot every single year. Not all markets are like that, but the game dev market right now is truly like that. And I always see people making, well, X game did this 10 years ago. Well, that's like saying, I could go up and stab people back in the medieval days with my sword. Doesn't mean you can do it today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, you cannot. Hey, Thorn. You cannot expect, I think, in today's market, for single platform releases to do well anymore. And I think that's something a lot of developers are, either learning it gently, or they are going to be, pulled or raked over the coals to learn this lesson. If you look at, again, Sega and even Capcom these days, they're going for multi-platform releases for all their big titles. That's not how it was 15, 20 years ago.
Oh, well, 15, 20 years ago, they had console.
Yeah. Back then, basically, PC gamers, and even if a game was released, exclusively on Sony or exclusively on Microsoft, that's it. If you want to play that game, you are buying that console, or you are not getting it. But all right, Rats, I'll see you later. But in today's market, developers and publishers have learned that if you want something to sell, you need to get as many eyes on it as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's working for Sega.
Yeah, I mean, Sega, focused on going in for the development side, because when you're a developer, you don't have to pay no heed to whatever platform you go on. I mean, you got to follow the rules, but you don't have to, be exclusive. You don't have to do any of this stuff because it's your game. You can do whatever you want with it, kind of thing. And when you have that freedom, kind of thing, why not put it on every platform you can? That's reasonable, kind of thing. Like you don't want to put it on a platform where it obviously wouldn't do well, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I mean, nobody wants a hardcore Kaizo platformer on a smartphone because the controls are not there for that.
Mm-hmm. But it could work on a console. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Super Meat Boy is on the many consoles these days. Same goes for the Binding of Isaac. And, from the AAA side, 10 years ago, who would have thought Monster Hunter, a PSP, marquee title, would eventually be brought to the PC, and in doing so became probably one of the best-selling games from Capcom of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is the challenge of supporting these franchises and maintaining this, that if you expect somebody to trust you, you need to have a record of trust.
You need
And
to earn their trust. Trust is
yep,
earned, not given.
yep. And in today's market, you can't. What's the word I'm thinking of?
You can't depend on them to automatically trust you.
Yeah. No, you can't be entitled. There we go. You can't be entitled to think that, oh, people are going to buy my game day one and will do amazingly well just because of that.
Well, you can be entitled. You'll just be sadly let down.
Well, true. And it is a tough lesson. I think a lot of AAA developers are learning, and they are learning this the hard way. That the days where you could just say, "Oh, this is the latest game on PlayStation or the latest game on Nintendo system," and do it well, it's kind of like being on Steam these days. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're on Steam, so's 10,000 other people.
yeah. I remember when I was putting my first game on Steam, and I had a few people being like, but can you even get on Steam? I was like, yeah, I just got paid $100. It's not a big thing,
Mm-hmm.
And way back in the day, you had to get special permission to get on Steam. You had to get special permission to do all this stuff, and where now the special permission is just $100.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
like it's like the point where hey, you don't even need a real driver's license. Just go to this guy on the corner, give him $100, and you got your driver's license. You're good to
Right.
go. And it's all perfectly legal. Just just slip anybody $100 bill, and you're perfectly legal to go.
Yeah. And Chet Felistic, I completely butchered his name, the developer from Valve, he weighed in on this on Twitter, and he said, I think this is a good quote. He said, "It's our job to give them the reasons to join us when talking about getting people to buy your game." And yeah, that is true. You have to give people the reason to give them to for them to give you money.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, you don't have to give them a lot of reason. You can just say, "This is a new Nintendo game. Here's my $60." Or for me, "Here's a new XCOM." But that is a very small segment of that market. There are people, again, who they don't have $60, $70 to spend every month or every few weeks on a new game. They would love to buy your game, but maybe they can only afford it at $20 or $30.
Yeah, there's
And
currency conversions that really
oh
play into
yes,
thing there where people like maybe $5 of U.S. currency is like the equivalent in their currency to $100,000, meaning that you have to be super super rich to be able to afford a $15 game. I mean, basically, the equivalent of everybody who can buy a Ferrari can buy this $15 game.
Mhm.
Basically, and when they're like that kind of thing, you can't sell your game to them because they don't have that kind of money. Well, I mean, a few do. A few have the equivalent of a few $100,000 in their currency to spend on a game, but most do not.
Yeah.
And when that happens, they're going to have to pirate your game because, or just not play it because they don't have another choice.
And this is how franchises don't grow. Because if you don't reduce that barrier, if you're not allowing more people to experience your game, what makes you think you're going to get a sequel? What makes you think there's going to be enough people to justify a sequel in the first place?
And this is the area where free to play games really shine because the fact is they have that you know extremely low barrier of free to download.
It's a free barrier.
Yeah,
And
the
it's,
only thing you have to pay in that is your internet bill, your electric bill, and your time to download it.
yeah. And to Thorne's question about have seasonal releases held, I think they have held, but it's hard to tell that I think people may be getting fatigued with it. With the latest Man release having issues of, the monetization, the what was it, the NBA game having similar ones. That I do think it's getting harder and harder to justify that. Because what are you going to do in a year's time that is going to be worth another $60 or the game you just released a year prior?
Yeah, not much.
And again, when we say seasonal release like this, like with Activision's case, they have multiple teams working on Call of Duty games concurrently. So it's not, the same developer working on a game year after year. What is it? They switch all between a Treyarch and Sledgehammer?
I don't
But
know.
for the consumer side, All they see is, okay, I spent $60 12 months ago. Here's another $60. What's new?
Yeah. And the reason why they're doing that is tax purposes, you know, because every year you're basically your taxes and everything reset. And certain things only carry over for certain periods of time. So you really need, ideally, in the perfect situation, a game releasing every year.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be the ideal situation, and basically the only people that are able to pull off that ideal situation is AAA. If as an indie you're pulling that off, then you're probably not pulling off games that are worth buying.
Mm-hmm.
Because like it is possible to make a game that's worth buying in a year, but it is damn hard to make
And
a
so they're
game worth
doing it
buying.
consistently every year.
Yeah. And you don't want to be consistent in that unless you're really damn good at it. And basically, very few to no developers are. None come to mind on that. I know some that are attempting that, like Tim, and he's one of the people that could potentially pull it off.
But he's not quite there yet. And again, this is that challenge of being successful in this industry. You need a lot to be successful and to get people to trust you on day one. If you're an indie developer, the chance of somebody buying your game day one is minuscule at best.
Mm-hmm.
Because why would they trust you?
Yeah. And,
And
demos can go a part of the way into gaining that trust.
or having people play that game. Aurora mentioned earlier, YouTubers and streamers.
Yeah.
You know,
Exposure.
if somebody like Markiplier or what was his name, a manly badass hero, and there's a lot of YouTubers who will cover early games or take first looks at them, such as myself. Plug the channel right there. There's your shameless plug for me right there. But
Subscribe and lick the smash button.
exactly,
Smash the lick button.
and you can get people to trust you that way. But it's all, no pun intended, it's all a game you have to play. You have to do everything right. And if you screw up even just one thing, it can erase all the good you did elsewhere.
It won't necessarily do it, but it can.
Mm-hmm. And even if you do everything right, you may still fail. That's the
Mm-hmm.
beauty of this industry.
Yep.
So,
It's a get poor quick scheme.
mm-hmm, unless you hit the lottery times 10.
Yeah. And even if you do, then you're probably going to fail after that because you didn't learn your lessons from failure before.
Yeah.
It's
And
one of those things where if you don't fail the first time, you're probably going to fail every time after that.
mm-hmm,
Where if you do fail the first time, then you may fail or succeed the next time. You may fail or succeed the next time, but when you start succeeding, you're going to continue to succeed more than likely.
yeah. And this is why we've said before why a lot of independent developers fail to maintain the momentum of their first big hit. That if you don't understand why your first game succeeded, you're not really going to be able to grow and improve. And when your second or third game comes out, people are just like, this is horrible. Why'd you make this? You just blew all the goodwill and trust you've built up from your first mega success.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why we see from developers that, like you just said, the ones who consistently do things right, continue to grow, it becomes harder for them to fail, not succeed. Clay Entertainment is a good example. Like, they have really gone on the ball in terms of their development scope. Super Giant Games is in a really big position after the success of Hades.
Mm-hmm.
Red Hook Games. I mean, at this point, I'm willing to bet money that Darkest Dungeon 2 is going to do well.
Yeah.
It's not going to fail for them.
I mean, it might fail to make $10 billion.
Yeah. If they replace a Wayne June with PewDiePie, maybe it will fail as a narrator.
Yeah.
But here's, I think, my final point, and we'll begin to wrap things up. Day one sales are not the standard anymore. You need to have people trust you in order to get them to kind of justify spending that money. And if you are a first-time developer, if this is a first-time game, or if this is an experimental game, people aren't going to trust that. And you're going to have to do more to get them to do it. And even if you do manage to get day one sales, don't forget about the people who are, maybe second or, third tier fans. They won't play your game, but they can't or won't be willing to spend $60. And this is why so many people have become adopted to game sales. Because maybe they're going to check out your game at $5 or $10. And if they do check it out and they really love it, maybe they'll buy the next one for $30 or $50. And what you want to do is, again, you have to build yourself up as a company. You want your name to carry weight to it. Again, with Clay Entertainment, I am sure for a lot of people that whatever the next game Clay announces, they're going to probably buy it day one or very, very close to it because of all the goodwill and trust they've built up. And like I think what you said earlier, Shar, is a really good point. That even if one of their games isn't a 100,000 review bestseller game of the year, most likely people are going to still walk away satisfied with it. Is it going to be, could it be another auction not included? Maybe. But it could just be a really solid game that is good enough for that fan base, but not good enough to be a five title franchise. And at the end of the day, that's okay.
Yeah. I do want to put a clarification here that I mean, like, as the industry wide, week one sales are the most important.
Mm-hmm.
And they will, and you need the most of them that you can because that determines basically what you're going to make after that. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that people are going to just buy your game week one without good reason to. You either need a name developed for yourself because of past games. You either need marketing dollars out the yin yang. Or a proven track history of smaller games kind of thing, or you need to be so like out in left field that everybody's like, that I want that.
I've never seen it before.
Yeah. Like hopefully hopefully that's what my current game will be doing, Neon Continuum, because it's pretty out there kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And
but in the same vein, though, being out there means you're going to have to do 10 times the work to get people to even be interested in your game.
Yeah, well, it's not so out there as of, it has a lot of concrete things, but those concrete things put together in a completely different way that make it out there kind of thing. None of the things are totally original kind of thing. Because I mean, CCGs, normal CCG stuff, that's all normal, Triple Triad is pretty normal to the people who have played it. It's a niche, but it's normal to that niche kind of thing. And I mean, I don't know if there's anything totally original about the game, because like there basically isn't anything totally original about any game. But like, it's this combination that basically, as far as I know of, has never been seen before.
Yeah, and thank you, Pop Music, for bringing that up about Undertale, because that is another point again that a lot of people don't. And again, leads into another 5 to 10 topics easily. That a lot of people look at success in a vacuum. They don't understand everything that goes into a game having that day one success. With Undertale, for instance, that the creator Toby Fox was well known in that space before anyone ever heard of Undertale, and he built up that trust and that goodwill through his previous works. If you expect day one to show up with no PR, no demo, nobody even knows who you are, and say, give me $60 or support my Kickstarter, what's the reason that you're giving them to trust you?
Mm-hmm. And they probably don't have one. And that'll be, the end of that.
Yeah. And again, with Darkest Dungeon, this will be my final point here. With Darkest Dungeon, Red Hook spent a good year before they even went to Kickstarter getting word out about them, building up that trust. They didn't just show up on Kickstarter or on Steam or PlayStation and just said, here's my game, give us $30. They were showing concept art. They were showing trailers and concept videos and, Wayne June's narration. So that when they went on to Kickstarter, they had that goodwill built up from the start. And if you don't put in the legwork here, again, like with Days Gone, or you release an inferior product, why do you think people should buy your game for $60?
Mm-hmm. And why would you, you can't exactly put a massive budget behind something that you don't have a very good likelihood of succeeding. And if it's something new, that's even, more risky.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that might wrap us up, right?
Yep, I think so. And again, we can certainly segue into a lot of other points about goodwill and trust. So I think for next week's show, let's talk a little bit more about why should you develop a sequel for a game and why shouldn't you? Because I think that gets in a lot of these conversations about game design and game marketing, and even just being a studio as well.
Right. So, there's a topic for next week. You guys subscribe, ring the bell so you can be here live and join in the conversation and with that topic next week. And down in the description, we don't know whose stream you're on. You may be on Josh's, you may be on mine. There's a link to the other one, and you can view the other half. And there's also links to both of our Discords, both of our Twitters, all that, all down in the description. So please join up and welcome to the community.
Mm-hmm. We will be back next Sunday, starting around 4:30 ET, live on both of our channels if you want to catch these shows live. And if you are any developer who's looking for Steam Store page reviews, check out our Thursday shows, Indie Inquiries. Other than that, again, thank you so much for tuning in. Come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where it's in the art and science of games. And until next time, take care.
See ya.